we can get rid of the color key. And here is the most important feature of GEIB Explorer, the time profile. So I click on the vertical squiggly line, the time profile, and that brings up this box that displays wherever my cursor is every 6 hours, say, for the next 7 days, all of the weather data that's in this data file for that position. So I'll walk you through it. The yellow line at the very left edge is the precipitation. And anytime that yellow line comes up off of 0, there's going to be some precipitation. The blue line is the lifted index, and notice that the first line is minus, third line there is minus 2.42. So the lifted index is going to fall to something maybe what, minus 4, minus 5 on the morning of the 12th of October 2015. And that's pretty unstable, and that's when we're going to have some rainfall, so those might be convective squalls, maybe even a few thunderstorms. The red line is wind speed, and notice that the we look at the at the top of that little panel for the key, and notice that the wind speed starts at 0, and then there's a line, and then 9.1 knots, and then there's a line, and then 18.3 knots. Tonight at 0600 hours UTC, the wind is going to blow about 18 or 19 knots. It will settle down a little bit on the 12th of October 2015, and then it picks back up on the 13th to around 18, 19, maybe 20 knots. Also, over on the very right-hand side of that little black box, we see an indication of the wind speed and direction with a wind flag for every 6 hours for the next 7 days as well. And all this information changes wherever I put my cursor. Finally, the last thing is that green line, that's the sea level pressure, and that's going to increase from about 1009 millibars currently to about 1021 millibars on the 16th of October. Let's say that I want to go look at the 12th of October 2015 at 1800 hours and look at that precipitation. The way I can do that really easily, rather than using the backward and forward buttons, is just to come down to the date and time stamp in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, right-click it, and then that brings up all the available times. I can select the one I want to see, and it takes me right there. So we can see that the reason we're going to get precipitation Monday the 12th of October is that there's going to be an area of low pressure up near Cape Lookout, and we're on the south side of that low with some squally weather. What do some of these other buttons do? So this would be to create a new file, to open a file. We don't really use those. WeatherNet opens the file for us automatically. We could print it. You can play around with the horizontal profile. It's really interesting to look at, but I don't think terribly useful. The 3D, similarly interesting to look at, but not terribly useful. The GPS feature, if you hook it up to a GPS properties panel, that's what where we adjusted the settings. The color key, if you want the color key for whatever parameter you're looking at, I don't find this particularly useful. GRIB options, we can fit all the data to the width of the screen. We can fit all the data to the height of the screen. We can display the actual size, which let's do that. So this displays the actual size, and I've got a lot of data, so it's displayed pretty small. What I suggest you use on a regular basis, the regional zoom, click that. Now, wherever I put my cursor and drag it, I drag a box. So I put my cursor there, and I drag a box and release it, and that's the regional zoom. That's the region that I'm going to be looking at the start. We can click and pan to move the screen. So just left click and pan, and that moves the screen. We only have one data file open at the moment, but I'm going to show you another data file open in just a minute. That's the sea state forecast. And once we have more than one file open, we can tile them horizontally or vertically or cascade the windows. So let's go do that. And so we bring up WeatherNet again, and this time we are going to choose the WaveWatch 3 sea state information, and download that. That's done. We close WeatherNet and it launches. And that's what the sea state information looks like. So again, we're way zoomed out. So we want to zoom in on the region of interest. And we do that, of course, by clicking on that regional zoom and then dragging a box. We can get rid of this color key. And I like to change the display parameters also for the sea state a little bit. Now, I've had some issues with my machine where this resets, and this seems to be a bug that varies by machine. So some machines may retain the sea state viewing parameters, others don't. This machine does not. So I'm going to open the Properties panel. Wave direction we will leave in the big red arrows. And that's the default, I believe. Wave height we are going to take off of default. We're going to paint 10 contour lines. We're going to start at a minimum of 2 feet and go up 1 foot per contour line. And we are going to use the dark blue to purple coloring. So there we have the sea state forecast. We are going to do exactly the same thing with the period of the seas, the interval of the seas. So the wave period, we're going to set exactly the same way. We're going to make the contour lines thicker. We are going to take it off default contours. We want to paint 10 contour lines. We want to start at 2 feet and increase 1 foot per contour line. And we're going to change how the labels look. We want an opaque background. We want an opaque background of white, I guess, is fine. Let's choose a font color of black because that'll show up well on white. We don't need a decimal place. And let's do Arial, bold, and 16 point for the font. And okay, there we are. So I click OK, and now refresh. And what else did I not do? Oh, I didn't change the color palette. So change the color palette to the same blue to purple. And there we are. So let's get rid of the Properties panel, and I will show you what this does for us. Okay, so first let me explain something about the relationship between sea height and interval. In a typical wind-driven wave, the sea height in feet is roughly equal to the interval in seconds. If we have a swell, then the interval in seconds is longer than the height in feet. So how does looking at sea state the way we have it painted on this chart now help us? Well, it helps us here. Let's say that we are out in the Atlantic somewhere to the northeast of Bermuda. We have an immediate visual cue that the waves here are easy swells because the wave height is in blue, which is very, very low on our color scale. And the wave interval is in orange or yellow, or green or orange or yellow or orange, which are much higher in color scale. So we can also see in our little status bar at the bottom of the screen that where my cursor is now, the waves are 4 feet high with a 6-second interval. And I'm going to move out of the green toward the yellow and orange, and we go from 4 feet roughly with an 8 or 9 second interval. Now let's look at the waters west of Bermuda. Here's Bermuda. So the waters west of Bermuda, now we have a green color background, which is height of 5.5 feet. and a green line for the interval, which is 6 seconds. So these are wind-driven waves. And where else might we find something interesting? Let's see the waters east of Newfoundland. We can see waters southeast of Newfoundland. We have seas that are yellow, which is about 7.5 feet, with a red interval, which is about a 9 seconds interval. That means it's a fairly easy swell. But if we go over to the same yellow, let's say back here east of Nova Scotia, instead of being 7.3 feet with a 9-second interval, now we're within the yellow contour for interval. We've got a 7-foot sea with a 7-second interval. That's more of a wind-driven wave. Same thing with the purple line here. If we look at the area up here, we've got a 12.5-foot wave with a 12-second interval. Down here, we've got a 9-foot wave with an 11-second interval. So it just helps us see visually. It helps us with a visual cue about the relationship between the interval of the wave and the height of the wave, which helps assess whether it's a wind-driven wave or a swell just by looking at the colors. Anyhow, these are some really neat features in WeatherNet, and I hope you find it as useful as I do.